Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a very long time since my last video. I was really busy organizing a few exhibitions offline, including this one called Capitalocene. It was shown at Armure Gallery in Montreal. And if you want to know more about this and other projects I've been up to recently, then please check out some of those links below. Otherwise, let's move on to the concluding episode of this series, where I coined the terms Capitalism Noir and the end of present times. So, alright then. So far in the previous episode, I positioned my views against Jean-François Lyotard, who proposed an end of grand meta-narratives or common cultural goals, if you will, and against Mark Fisher in Hauntology, who said that our future is made of nothing more than ghost appearances of the past. Francis Fukuyama, who declared an end of history after the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall, and against Yuval Noah Harari, who planted the idea that major historical events are but a thing of the past because we've already gotten rid of war, famine, and disease. Really? So maybe you can agree with me that in 2022, some of these ideas have not aged very well, but nonetheless I find the said authors represent a general opinion that emerged and has still persisted in many circles since the 1990s up until today, the idea that the future is disappearing with technology, with the internet, when it's actually, I find, is the present which is fading away. The present is waning. It's waning from our ability to understand it and to act in the present upon the issues of present times, like climate change, racial and economic inequality, pandemics, wars, and so on. So to find out why this is happening according to these authors, again, please just go to my previous episodes in the links below. So from this point on, I'll just carry on explaining my own take on the problems at hand, which I encapsulate in the following statement. So, capitalism noir is sustained by the disappearance of the present. So that's my statement. Let's unpack it right now. All right, first, what is capitalism noir? It's a metaphor. It's an artistic play on words, if you will, in reference to the cinematic genre film noir, where in the 1940s and 50s, filmmakers were kind of struggling to find new ways to tell new stories, despite the limitations of black and white celluloid. They were limiting the expressive potential of cinema in comparison to color. But as a workaround solution, the filmmakers of this time came up with a lot of sophisticated yet complex lighting effects, as in John Alton's The Big Combo, Orson Welles' Touch of Evil, and of course John Huston's Maltese Falcon. But as soon as color film was invented, all those effects of light and shadow kind of became redundant. It was excessively convoluted in comparison to the cornucopia of expressive means that color unleashed. And I claim this is exactly what's happening with capitalism noir today. It's an economic model that has also plateaued. It has reached kind of an upper limit, like film noir, an end of its innovation, a running out of ideas from about also the mid-20th century. So capitalism noir is kind of like Ptolemy's geocentric planetary system. You know, it's struggling with an over-elaborate model to explain how the Earth should be at the center of the universe and how everything else should turn around it. So in the same way, capitalism is also running around in circles. It's struggling to tell us that there are no alternatives to this doctrine, that everything must revolve around it, but this central position is sustained only through the use of ever more complex economic terms like quantitative easing, bear and bull markets, junk bonds, securitized derivatives, carbon tax, just-in-time manufacturing, negative externalities, austerities, hedge funds, and so on and so on. It's never end. But like the heliocentric model of Copernicus, which followed, putting the sun at the center of the solar system, this made Ptolemy's geocentric model come crashing down into obsolescence instantly. I say the complexities of capitalism are about to meet the same fate. Because Capitalism Noir is increasingly looking like a terribly outdated and dysfunctional system. It's a top-heavy structure about to fall on itself like a house of cards, as more elegant and practical and egalitarian economic and social models rise to our awareness. And beyond the complex words that I sampled earlier, junk bonds, carbon tax, etc., capitalism is really not that complicated. It consists of only two main components, like light and shadow in Film Noir. So what are these two main elements of capitalism from where all other interactions emerge? Well, I find these groups are the rich and the poor, or the haves and the have-nots, or, as I said in previous episodes, the few owners and the many renters of capital. So the few are making lots of money from charging rent to the many, and the many are making a lot less money from labor, from working to earn a wage, and this money earned is then returned to the rich, a sort of a return to sender, if you will. So when they're paying their rent, their food, their transportation, their education, and on, the poor are returning this money back to the rich. So it's really a circular system. It's going around in circle. When they're working at their jobs, the poor are working for the rich, and when they get paid, the poor can pretty much only buy stuff that the rich are selling, because they own the stores as well. So there's nothing really complicated about that. It's really, again, a simple loop and quite a vicious circle. Okay, so enough about Capitalism Noir now. Let's talk about the end of present times. This is another play on words, another metaphor I came up with in reference to how things got complicated under capitalism. It's a metaphor, but what it refers to is 100% real. I'm not talking about the idea of capitalism, which you can read in a manifesto by Karl Marx or in a neoliberal reform from Milton Friedman or any other thinker discussing the ideals of capitalism. But what I'm talking about instead is really existing capitalism. It's about the kind of transactions you can observe in today's dominant economies. So in today's actually existing system, my question to you is, what do you think is the most common type of transaction in our local and global economy? The short answer, I find, is credit. So before getting to the long answer, we need to dig a bit deeper and ask why. So why is credit making capitalism more complicated than it truly is? And at the same time, why is credit stopping capitalism from crumbling to pieces? So the short answer to that question is because credit is moving money through time. Yeah, that's right. Like Ptolemy over-complexifying the movements of celestial bodies, credit is over-complexifying the transactions between those that have money and those that have not money. Instead of a simple motion of moving money and commodities through space from one person here to another person there, with credit, money is moving through time. So how is that possible? Well, it's because your credit card is taking money away from your future self to buy something you would otherwise not be able to afford in the present. With credit, you're buying something in the present with the hypothetical money you might have in the future. So another way of saying this is that you're gambling on the chance that you will be richer one day. I mean, richer than you are now. But in order to guarantee that you will be richer tomorrow, you need to start working harder today so that your future self can pay for the bills on what you just bought and consumed today. So we do this with credit cards, with student loans, with mortgages. We pretty much all do this today. But as a result, we, the money poor, we've also become time poor. We're now so busy working to pay for our upcoming credit card bills that we've become too busy to question this arrangement, this capitalist arrangement, or to protest against its injustices. And instead, we might even lobby to sustain capitalism because most of us will think that capitalism represents our best chance of getting richer in the future. I mean, at least rich enough to pay back tomorrow for today's credit. But then what happens is we experience life as if we were already our future selves when we make life choices to sustain ourselves to come and not so much our present self. And this is why, in a nutshell, I find it is the present which is disappearing and not the future. Come again? What am I talking about? A more important question is who? Who am I to talk about all this stuff? Because it's absolutely true that I'm not speaking about capitalism, debt, credit. I'm not speaking about all this stuff as an economist or as a sociologist or any kind of science-based expert. I'm speaking about all these issues as a visual artist, and that's really important. Why? Well, let's go back to one of my favorite things that Mark Fisher said in his book Capitalist Realism, and it's that I'm paraphrasing here. He said that it's become impossible for us to imagine a world outside of capitalism. And this is where artists come in useful in this discussion, because that's mainly what we do. Visual artists, they capture and feed our imagination. Artists are actually in the best position to help us imagine a simpler world outside of capitalism, a way out of capitalism noir. So I can tell you from experience that artists are actually quite nimble in a variety of social contexts. They can easily blend into different social classes and move from rich to poor communities. And with this skill, artists often take inspiration from popular culture to make high art or poetry or fashion, and then feed this content to the elites, or vice versa. Artists and designers can just as easily take cues from high art and fashion and make it into popular culture. And this is kind of what I'm doing now with Capital. With Capitalism Noir, I'm providing you, the viewer, with enough imagination to see through the illusions of hyper-complex credit systems, to break all these down into simpler interactions between richer and poorer folks, because that's all it is. Credit is like any other transaction between the rich and the poor. It's another circle. It's someone with money lending it to someone else with the promise of giving back more money in the future because of interest. But my promise to you is that by the end of this video, you'll have more intellectual tools to improve your economic imagination. You'll be able to imagine like John and Yoko did before us, or even like Elmo if you're lucky. To begin this journey in reclaiming our imagination, we should ask more questions. we should question if capitalism really is inevitable, and is it so when there are no alternatives, like Fisher said, or when there are worse alternatives? The most obvious case study for this dilemma is with communism. So was capitalism viewed in a better light before or after 1989, the year of the fall of the Berlin Wall? And did this failure of communism actually mean that capitalism won? Well, the short answer is no. I think that, on the contrary, the absence of an external threat brought into sharp focus the internal contradiction of capitalist hegemonies. In the absence of alternative economic systems or belligerent enemies, Bernie Sanders was even able in 1995 to propose, unsuccessfully, but he did propose the dismantling of America's nuclear weapons program, which was obviously impossible to even imagine just 10 years ago, before the end of the Cold War. It was only with the events of 9/11 and the identification of a new external threat in radical Islam that capitalism, hiding behind the veil of democracy, could again reign unchallenged. Okay, so that's enough. You see, I'm digressing. Things are getting complex again. So even for me, it's difficult to avoid sometimes the complexities of capitalism, to not explain like capitalism as an inversion of the relations between money and commodity. Money is no longer a means to exchange goods or services, but an end in itself. So that's kind of the classic definition of capitalism. The use of a resource is transcended in order to focus solely on wealth extraction, when extracting coal from a mine or wood from a forest, extracting wealth from human resources as well, extracting monthly rent from housing, tuition from education, insurance fees, and so on. But the reason why we need to go back to credit and explain how it is extracting wealth from the future is because of an additional factor, and that's growth. For today's really existing capitalists, it's not only essential to make money, but it's also vital to make more money than last year, last month, more money than yesterday. So you see, again, we're moving through time. And in today's highly productive economy, since almost everything is already optimized to extract as much money as possible, public facilities are getting privatized and so on, everything is much more productive. So because of that situation, there's very little room left to grow. But with credit, capital can continue to grow by extracting wealth from the future. So again, I say, one of the few remaining ways to grow, to make more money than yesterday, is to borrow from tomorrow. But as you can imagine, this kind of wealth extraction is not sustainable. And this is why we are seeing huge cracks in the system of capitalism noir, like when color caused the fall of film noir. And this is why, with the housing crisis of 2008, with the COVID pandemic and the pending oil and food crises caused by war in Ukraine, we're continually told to look away. All these emergencies are deflecting our critique of capitalism. They're acting as squirrels, if you will, making us look away from capital's internal contradiction. And what's more, we're told that our most pressing duty to end these crises caused by capitalism is to return to normal, to business as usual. In other words, we're told that the solution to capitalism is more capitalism. So this is why I say capitalism's war is mainly a war on the imagination. And this is our ongoing condition. And in this scenario, incentives to move away from capital are repressed, not in a disappearing future like Fisher or Fukuyama claimed, but in our inability to act in the present, to act as Saint Greta called us to do in 2019, to act right here, right now.
Change is coming, whether you like it or not. Right here, right now, right here, right now.
So yes, I do agree that since the invention of recorded media, our present is flooded with archives of the past, photos, music, videos, and increasingly, our present is also filled with expectations of the future, with technology and science fiction, and both the past and the future are adding inertia, they're adding weight to our ability to mobilize in the present. You know, expressions like the future is now, those expressions are promoting a continual upgrade of gadgets that confuse our expectations of things to come with our experience of things that are already present, already here and now. And the result of that is an increasing difficulty to deal with today's big issues like climate change, social injustice, wage slavery, debt peonage, and rent feudalism. So what's the solution then? Well, my short answer to you is, I don't know. You shouldn't expect me to provide you with a static one-size-fits-all response or a binary solution which you can just take it or leave it like another single-use consumer item. By doing so, we would risk falling into the trap of talking about the flaws of the solution rather than continue talking about the flaws of the problem, which is capitalism. Settling for a short answer represents just another distraction, another form of war against our imagination. So, therefore, the long answer starts with recognizing that capitalism is the problem, whether or not there are alternatives. Start by just saying no to capital. Say winners don't use capital. At the very least, tell it like Melville's Bartleby and say to capital, I would prefer not to. Because the first solution to capitalism is not capitalism. And this is what's called a dialectical response, when you find a solution to a problem in its negation or its reversal. So here's an easy example. The dialectical response to one's hand burning in the fire is to take your hand out of the fire. This might sound weird, but it's actually quite a powerful thought process. With the dialectical response, your most immediate solution to capitalism is not capitalism. So then definitely the next part of the solution will involve admitting that the problem is systemic, it's macroscopic, and yet the worldwide macro system in place is capitalism. Capitalism is everywhere, just like God used to be. But if we interrupt our shallow obsession with the micromanagement of short-term crises, only then can we pay more attention to the more profound causes. And then we can understand that the alternative to war-plagued Russian oil is not war-plagued Saudi oil, but a turn to much greener ways of living. And likewise, the solution to the hyperconsumption of fossil fuel is not the hyperconsumption of hydrogen fuel or lithium batteries. The solution to single-use plastic is not a single-use mycelium packaging, and the solution to world poverty is definitely not a corporate space race. No, I anticipate the solutions will be multiple. They will need to be imagined according to each one's needs and abilities. And once those solutions are imagined, we'll need to get up and do the work of trying them out right here, right now. And for that, we'll need to take our time. We'll need to stop living in the future and overcome time scarcity, because time wants to be free. And with more free time, I wager that the billions of brains on this earth will figure out how to let go of the social divisions between the haves and the have-nots. And perhaps even one day, they'll want to free themselves of a need for the police and military enforcing present economic divisions, through violent means. So just say no to credit and reclaim the present. From there, we will figure out more dialectical responses and question more of the key features of capitalism. Can we negate growth? Can we undo the ties of money and labor? Can we achieve debt cancellation and universal basic income? Can we transition from privatizing profit to socializing profit? And ultimately, can we please stop being so busy? Sure, why not? But to conclude, I will say that to trigger a real and definite collapse of capitalism noir on the scale of film noir with the arrival of color, we should not only invert the existing problems of capitalism, but we also need to propose new solutions, like sharing and caring, which represents to me an end of competitive divisions between the haves and the have-nots. Sharing and caring actually stems from an understanding that on a small and isolated planet like ours, everything is connected in a web of life. And in this web, it's no longer possible to establish binary oppositions like the rich against the poor. It's actually becoming obvious that the rich have the most resources to share and to take care of others. Because in a closed world system, when some lose, everybody loses. And no one wins when only a few win. So with natural catastrophes, forest fires, tropical storms, and so on, there are no winners in this scenario because we are all nature. We are actually not in opposition, but in a same continuum. And the ones higher up need to take care of others all the way down this continuum, and not just take care of other humans, but also all animals, plants, mineral, the land, air, and seascapes, because again, we are nature and we need nurture. So there you go. I'll end on these fine words. So now is the time for us to do the work of changing the present. Let's not wait around for things to happen spontaneously, because change by definition is contingent on its protagonist. That's you. So do tell me more about your journey towards changing capitalism in the comments below, and congratulations for making until the end of this video. I mean, thanks you so much for your attention, and please like and subscribe if you want to know more about any follow-up video. But until then, take care.